Good morning. Today we are doing our last objective of Unit 5, CO43. I can solve two-step equations. This being our last objective. Next week, Monday, we have our Mass of the Holy Spirit. So we are not correcting this on Monday because we are going to be gone for Catholic Schools Week. Tuesday, we will correct this, and then we're going to review. So Tuesday is a correct and review day for us for Unit 6. Wednesday is the practice test. Thursday is the real test for Unit 6. Or 5. Sorry, I think this is Unit 5. So we need to be ready for our test on Thursday. Okay. So CO43, I can solve two-step equations. So we've solved one step. What do we have to do when we're multiplying with the variable, dividing with the variable? Remember how we do that opposite operation? Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side with those opposite operations. Well, now we're throwing in two steps. Solving an equation with two steps is merely building off the last two objectives and combining the two ideas. It's at this point we move away from fact families, since there is more than one operation in the equation, and because our equations are more complex, using logic alone is difficult. So remember when we talked about those three methods, logic with the question, opposite operations, and fact families, I said we're going to get to a point where we're just going to use opposite operations. When it was easy, we could say 5n equals 30. Well, I know n equals 6 because 5 times 6 is 30. That was easy. We have to use opposite operations now because it's not easy anymore. I don't want to sit in there trying to do mental math figuring it out. I want every single one of us to follow the steps that I'm putting on my paper. Do the same steps on yours for every problem. Even if it is one that you might be able to do a mental math with, we're going to practice the steps. So if we have 5n plus 7 equals 32, we can see that there are two operations. We have that plus 7, so we're adding 7, and we have the product of 5 and n, 5 times n. So there's two operations. The opposite of addition is what?
Subtraction.
Subtraction. And the opposite of multiplication is what? Division. Here is where you need to be careful. When solving for a variable, there's an order that must be followed. And guess what? We are doing the opposite of PERMDAS. We've worked with PERMDAS, parentheses, exponents, radicals, multiply, divide, add, subtract. We're going to work it the opposite way. We're going to go backwards, and we're going to do SAD-MERP. SAD-MERP. So our first thing that we do is we are going to add or subtract. So you should be writing this down. So we are going to add or subtract first. So if up here we have 5n plus 7, what do you think we need to do?
We could probably take like the 32 and subtract it from 7.
We have 5n plus 7 equals 32. So remember when we were adding or subtracting, how did we add or subtract out? So you're right, we're not going to take 32 subtract from 7. We're going to subtract 7 from both sides. So we have plus 7, we want to subtract 7 from both sides. So that gives us 5n plus 7 minus 7 on that number line brings us to 0. So we don't have to write that again. We just have 5n equals, what's 32 minus 7? 25. So now we have 5n equals 25. What's the operation that's happening in that equation? 5n equals 25. Jimena. Yeah, multiplying. 5n is multiplying. What's the opposite? Say it louder, Sawyer. Divide. So we need to divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is that 1. So we are left with just n. 1n is n. What's 25 divided by 5? 5. So we get n equals 5. So we have to see those two steps. We had to add or subtract. Then we had to multiply or divide, always doing the opposite. Madison?
What if the number doesn't go in? If it was like 25, like if it was 75.
Then you might end up with a decimal.
I meant 25 divided by 7.
Yeah. If you put 25 divided by 7 in your calculator, you would get a decimal. But what I would want you to do first is double check to make sure that you're not doing the wrong operation. Okay? But sometimes there might be a decimal for an answer. So let's do some work together. Remembering that SADMERP, we always do that adding or subtracting before we multiply or divide. So as when solving any variable, plug your solution in. Oh, we forgot to double check to make sure it works. We said n equaled 5. So let's plug 5 in. 5 times 5 plus 7 equals 32. We know 5 times 5 is 25, plus 7 equals 32. 25 plus 7 is 32, equals 32. That's how we check to make sure we did our math correctly. So Madison, you would go back and you would plug in that decimal and say, hey, does this get me to equal, balancing out both sides? And if it doesn't, then somewhere you went wrong. All right, so we're going to practice a few. We already practiced the one above. Oh, they have it right here. So we did -7 and -7. So we had 5n equals 25. Then we divided by 5, and we got n equals 5. Let's look at our next one. 2n plus 17 equals 25. What is the first step we have to do? Remembering that we are doing SADMERP. Subtracting and adding, dividing and multiplying, exponents and radicals, and then parentheses. So what is our first step? Zelda?
We could subtract the 17 out of 25.
We have a plus 17. So not just out of the 25, Zelda, we have to subtract that 17 from both sides. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So 17 minus 17 leaves me with 2n. What's 25 minus 17? I think somebody said it. Say it a little louder. 8. So we have 2n equals 8. What? Bryn, you look a little confused. Are you following?
Yeah.
Okay. Just squinting to see the board better? Okay. What do I do with 2n equals 8? What is this operation that I have to do, Layla? It is multiplying already. Remember, this is opposite operations. Yeah, so we are multiplying. We need to divide that 2. So 2 divided by 2 gives me the 1n. What is 8 divided by 2? 4. So I have n equals 4. I need to go back and say, does n truly equal 4? If I have 2 times 4 plus 17, does that equal 25? 2 times 4 is 8 plus 17. 8 plus 17 is 25. 25 does equal 25. So if you ever get an answer, like Madison asked, well, what if we got a decimal? If you get an answer you're not sure is correct, plug it in and say, does this work for my variable? If I put it in the equation, are both sides going to balance out and equal each other? So I do want you to be checking your answers for every single one of these. Make sure you're getting the correct answer. Let's look at our next one. 12n minus 5 equals 91. What's my first step? Come on up.
Yep. You have to add, change the, subtraction into addition.
So what am I going to add to both sides?
The,
I was subtracting 5, so I need to add 5. Very good. Add 5 to both sides. So I'm going to bring down that 12n. Minus 5 plus 5 gets me to that 0. So if I'm at a negative 5, because minus 5 is the same as saying negative 5. Plus 5 is the same as saying positive 5. They get to the 0 on the number line. So it's 12n. 91 plus 5 is 96. Marina.
can I show my work in like a different way? I'm still gonna show my work, but can I do it a different way?
So there are reasons why I have us do it this way where it goes down, because when we get to even more complicated equations, which we will in pre-algebra and algebra, we want to be able to follow so we know we're balancing out both sides. Sometimes people like to just say, to do it in different ways, but it doesn't follow the order. So when we get to the harder math, we don't know how to show it and we get confused and we do wrong steps. So the reason I have us doing it this way, I know it seems tedious and like a lot of, why am I having to do it like this? The reason I have us do it is because I know what's coming. I've been through calculus. I know what's coming down the road. So I want us to get the good habit set up right now. So we're gonna set it up this way. When it's work time, I want you to come over. I want you to practice it this way as we're practicing as a class. When it's work time, come over and show me what way you were thinking, and I'll see if that way will work in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we are at 12n equals 96, what is my next step? What operation is happening with 12n? Layla? Yeah, because right now what's happening is we're multiplying. So Layla's right. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide out our 12. 12 divided by 12 gives me the 1n. 96 divided by 12 is what? Zelda.
8.
It is 8. So now we go back and we put 8 into our problem. 12 times 8 minus 5 equals 91. 12 times 8 we know is 96. Minus 5 equals 91. 96 minus 5 is 91 equals 91. So you do need to show how you are checking it. You can't just say 12 times 8 minus 5 automatically is 91. I want you to go through each step to make sure that you're doing your math correctly. So one more on the top row, and then we're going to switch down to the bottom row. So we have 10n minus 9 equals 41. What's my first step? Lilia.
You add 9.
We were subtracting 9, so we need to add 9 to both sides. Minus 9 plus 9 zeros out, so I have 10n equals 41 plus 9 is 50. What's my next step? 10n equals 50. What should I do? I'm looking for some more people to make sure we are knowing what to do. What should I do? Lilia?
Divide by 10.
Yeah, we are multiplying by 10 here, so opposite would be divide by 10. 10 divided by 10 gets me 1n. 50 divided by 10 gets me 5. So I go back and say 10 times 5 minus 9 equals 41. 10 times 5 is 50 minus 9 equals 41. So I know 50 minus 9 is 41, and that really does equal 41. So now let's look at our next row. N over 4 plus 13 equals 15. What do I do here? What should my first step be? N over 4 plus 13 equals 15. Oh, I see people that are working but not raising their hands. So I see people who know what to do, but they're not showing me they know what to do. I know that my people with their hands up have been answering the questions, so I know they know what to do. Should I randomly call on someone, or can somebody who has not raised their hand participate? What is the first step? Remember, our level is adding or subtracting. So if I have n over 4 plus 13 equals 15, what should I do, Connor? What should I subtract? The opposite of what I was at. So if I added 13, yeah, I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. So plus 13 minus 13. So whatever you were adding, you're going to subtract that same number. So the opposite is adding to subtracting, but that number stays the same, so we want it to zero out. So I have n over 4 equals 15 minus 13, which is 2. So now I have n over 4. There's that fraction bar. What operation is it if I have a fraction bar? Zelda?
It's division.
It's division. So what's the opposite of dividing, Lauren K? Multiplication. So if I was dividing by 4, now I need to add 4 to both sides. So 4n divided by 4, I get just n, 1n. And I have 2 times 4, that gives me 8. N equals 8. Did that make sense, Ava?
No.
Which part? The adding or subtracting, or the multiplying dividing?
Kind of everything.
All right, so let's walk through it one more time. And it's okay. I don't like just having to try to read people's facial expressions, because sometimes people don't give me a facial expression to say they're not understanding it. So I'm glad that Ava was brave and said, hey, I'm not getting it. It's not working. So remember, our first step is to add or subtract. So I look down here and I see we're adding 13. So I'm going to subtract 13. So 13 minus 13 gets me a 0, right? So that's how I get n over 4 by itself, because I subtracted away that 13 that we had added. I need to balance it out and do it to the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. So I need to minus a 13 from the 15. Because if I minus from one side, I have to minus from the other side. So I'm going to subtract out of both sides. So 15 minus 13, that's how I got the 2.
Oh.
Then we looked at it and said, okay, the next step is dividing or multiplying. So I know here I am dividing. So the opposite of dividing is going to be to multiply both sides. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So multiplying it by 4, now I have 4n divided by 4. 4 divided by 4, that's how I get my 1n. I want n by itself. 2 times 4 is 8.
Oh, okay.
So now I plug it back in and I say 8 divided by 4 plus 13, does that equal 15? 8 divided by 4 is 2, plus 13, does that equal 15? Yes, it does. 2 plus 13 is 15 equals 15. So when I plug that variable back in, I see that it works. Now I have n over 5 minus 20 equals 40. What's my first step? N over 5 minus 20 equals 40. Melanie. Yep, I'm going to add 20 to both sides because I had subtracted 20. So now I have to add 20. I have to do it to both sides. Minus 20 plus 20 cancels us out to that 0. So now I have n over 5, and then 40 plus 20 is 60. So what's my next step? What's that second step? N over 5 equals 60. I did my adding. What do I have to do now? Am I going to divide or multiply? It is. Why would it be multiplied? Because that fraction bar means divide. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply by that 5. Because 5n divided by 5 gets me down to just n. So what I did to this side, I have to do to this side, and I have to say 60 times 5. What is 60 times 5?
300 is 300.
It is 300. So now, some of us are saying, oh, that's a really big number. Do we really want it? 300? That seems huge. So we're going to go back and we're going to check it. And I'm just going to write it down here. 300 divided by 5 minus 20 equals 40. What is 300 divided by 5?
60.
It's 60. Minus 20 equals 40. 60 minus 20 is 40 equals 40. I can see that I am doing this correctly. Any questions on that one? Claire, I saw your hand had gone up. Did I answer your question? What? I can't hear you. Okay, so were you following along when we did the one-step objectives? So when we did like n plus 20 equals 40, were you able to solve for the n? So we're just doing those two separate steps, and then like if we had n over 5 equals 20, we're doing the same steps that we did with these two objectives. We're just putting it together into the same equation. So that's why it's called a two-step equation. So we're doing the adding or subtracting objective. The objective we've already done. And then we're going to do the multiply or divide objective. We've already done it, but we're just doing it on the same equation. So it seems a little overwhelming when we're putting it together. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm doing all this stuff. But it's stuff that we've already done. It's nothing new. Okay, so I don't want you to be freaking out thinking it's all new math. This is two objectives we've already done. We're just combining it into one equation. Melanie.
So on that table, clearly, first we'll do the first step, like the subtraction, add, depending on what the option was.
Yep.
Then we already did like all 20 plus 20, like the and 2 over 5 minus 20.
Mm-hmm.
If you do 40 plus 20, you get 60, then like n equals 60. So why don't we just
No, it's n over 5 equals 60. So it's n divided by 5 equals 60. So we have to multiply it by 5 to get n by itself. So we have to make sure that we're carrying down. If it's n over 5 here, when we rewrite it, it's n over 5. The only thing we did was the adding or subtracting. So we took care of that part of the equation. We still have n over 5. So now we have to do the opposite of dividing, which was multiplying, because we want to get n by itself. Did that answer your question? Madison?
So when we divide like n over 4, we subtract. Wait, no, I'm talking about n over 5.
Mhm.
So the opposite of division is multiplication. So why don't we multiply?
We did multiply. We had 5 times n over 5.
I know, but like instead of like plus 20, I added those by 20. Why don't we like multiply it by 20?
Because we have to do SADMER. We have to do the subtraction and addition first. Just like when we do PERMDAS, you have to follow the right order of operations or you will get the wrong answer. So when we're doing opposite operations, we have to follow the order of SADMER. We have to subtract or add first. Otherwise, we will get the wrong answer. Okay? It's a good question, but it's the order of operations. So instead of doing PERMDAS, we're doing SADMER. So I want you to do these last two on your own. I wanted to show us something from the next page, because this is a 2-pager. Let's look at this one. 20 plus 22n equals 1,230. So everybody go to this problem right here on our second page. Everybody go to the second page. So put your book away, please, Layla. Put it away so we can focus on that. What do you think our first step is? It's not as easy as we think. It's not. So I hear people talking, and I'm telling you, this is a confusing problem, which is why I asked us all to be on the second page at this problem. What is our first step, Zelda?
Instead of well, you probably would have to subtract something.
We are going to have to subtract something because these are all positive things here. So we want the negatives. Am I going to subtract 22n? Why not, Zelda?
Because it has a variable, and that means...
Because it has the variable in it, and we want to do the non-variable first. Because this is actually multiplying 22 times n, so we don't want to subtract that. So if we look at a positive 20, if it is a positive, it has that plus sign in front of it. We just don't show it. So what's the opposite of plus 20? Sawyer? Minus 20. So your first step cannot have the variable with it. That first step doesn't have the variable. So that means we subtract the 20 because we want to keep the variable on this side. So now we have plus 22n equals 1,210. What does plus 22n mean? It means it's a positive 22. So it doesn't mean we have to add. It means it's a positive 22 now. So if we're multiplying that 22, now we're going to divide by 22. So your first step, not the variable. Second step is the one that has the variable with it. So now we do 22 divided by 22, we're left with just n. 1,210 divided by 22 gets us 55. So that's an important thing to note. That your first step, adding or subtracting, and it does not have the variable with it. When we're doing these two-step equations, first step is adding or subtracting, no variable. Second step is multiplying or dividing, that's the one with the variable. Remember, if we see a negative number, that's the same as subtracting it. If we see a positive number, that's the same as adding it. Any questions? Okay, so remember, we are correcting this on Tuesday, but I do not want us to forget to complete it. So make sure you're using your time wisely. Go back to that first page. Make sure you did those last two problems. So do those last two problems on the first page right now so we don't forget them. If you are watching this from somewhere else, remember I said that, or what I said to the class was that there is no Khan Academy for next week because it's Catholic Schools Week, but you do have a math packet to work on. We do have, please stop. I'm recording. We do have our math test. This is our last objective, so our math test will be next week, Thursday, for those of us in class. So make sure you are understanding these operations. I will be after school on Wednesday. If you want to stay after school Wednesday of next week to do a little review session, there were some of us that were still a little confused. So if you want to do the review session Wednesday after school, I will be here before the test on Thursday. If you're watching this elsewhere, I hope you are well. I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.